All right, sports fans, how's everybody out there doing? William Martin coming at you one more time here on YouTube with another edition of the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge Podcast. With the 2023 Major League Baseball season in its final stages, the Atlanta Braves are steamrolling to their sixth consecutive National League East title. And in the process, the road to the World Series more than likely will go through Atlanta as the Braves currently have the best record in baseball. And if you've paid attention to this season, it should not be a surprise at how the Braves have dominated their competition, as you're talking about a lineup that leads the NL in batting, home runs, runs scored, on base percentage, and slugging, just to name a few, while their pitching staff has one of the top ERAs in the National League, and they're also second for strikeouts. But of course, one question is going to be, how did the Braves get to this point of being so dominant? And I have several theories on this. I mean, you think about it with baseball right now, and in an era that focuses so heavy on the analytics, and I'm sure that the Braves themselves have a strong analytics department. They have a very balanced lineup, as there's really not a lot of weaknesses in there. And when I say balance, you look at some teams around baseball, at least right now, they want to put their power guys, the guys that can go out there that really should be hitting cleanup, if you will, in that leadoff spot or in that second spot, trying to cheat and get them more ABs. And honestly, anybody who's followed the great game of baseball knows your power guys belong in that cleanup slot. It's called the cleanup position for a reason. You need that leadoff guy who's a table setter. You need that two guy who can get on base, and you need that three guy and that five guy to protect the cleanup guy. But in the sense of the Braves, you look at Ronald Acuna Jr., who for the most part is batting leadoff. For some other teams, he probably could be a three hitter, but for this Braves team, due to the fact that they're so deep in the middle of that lineup, with the likes of Marcell Ozuna, with the likes of Austin Riley, with the likes of Matt Olson, that you can put a guy like Ronald Acuna Jr. at the leadoff spot, and then you look at what he's done this year. To me, I think he's finally healthy again after that ACL injury cost him the 20 like half of the 2021 campaign. He struggled at times trying to get it back last year, because it takes you some time, regardless of the sport, to get your legs back coming from that ACL injury. But now you look at this guy this year heading into play today, hitting 334, on base percentage of 416, 29 home runs, 79 runs batted in, and 61 stolen bases. And the stolen bases obviously are eye popping, but they're eye popping in a good way. I know that MLB tried to, sweeten things up, a little bit by expanding the bases, and it's working because the stolen base numbers are up. And in the case of Ronald Acuna Jr., he's on the verge of becoming the first Brave since Otis Nixon in 1991 to steal 70 bases in a season. And of course, for those old school Braves fans, they know that 91 was a year that things really got turned around. They went from worst to first in the National League West, won the pennant, and came within a game of winning the World Series that year in a thrilling series versus the Minnesota Twins. But nonetheless, you think about Acuna Jr., what he means to this Braves lineup. And of course, when you have a guy who can get on base at the leadoff spot, and on top of that, when you have a guy who can steal bases, it changes the dynamic for a lineup, because the power guys behind him get better pitches to hit. And aside from Acuna, I talked about Ozuna, Austin Riley, and Matt Olson and what they mean in the middle of that lineup. You have a guy like Ozzy Albies, who to me is a throwback, because he could be a two guy in a lineup from like 25, 30 years ago. He gets on base, he makes contact, you name it. And to me, I think he's the perfect guy to come after Acuna in that lineup, and the perfect guy to be in front of your big boppers. And then on top of that, you also have guys like Orlando Arcia and Michael Harris in this lineup as well. And Michael Harris is still a young guy. He's figuring it out, and the sky is the limit for him. And then, of course, the rotation, one of the top ERAs in baseball. You look at Spencer Strider, they just got Max Fried back, and he's starting to look like Max Fried again. You got Charlie Morton and Bryce Elder. And of course, credit goes to the field manager and Brian Schnicker because he continues to monitor things, but also the guy that's calling the shots in the front office, Alex Anthopoulos. And of course, he put things together for the Toronto Blue Jays in the mid 2000s when they made consecutive postseason appearances. And, a power struggle, if you will, led to him leaving there. And of course, he landed right on his feet here in Atlanta. And I think he's doing it again because this Braves team has a very good talent balance, if you will, in their talent from homegrown talent as well as guys that they've picked up via trades. And it's all coming together. And drafting guys is one thing, but because everybody is hopeful to draft talent, but you have to find a way to develop that talent. And that's what the Braves have done. And this is why, the Braves are in the position that they currently are. You're talking about a team, they're more than likely going to win 100 games once again. They're once again going to be one of the World Series favorites. And of course, there's going to be some people that are going to sit back and say, is this Braves team right now better than the Braves team that won in 2021? And as of right now, you can make a case for that because that Braves team that won it all in 2021 did not have the services of Ronald Acuna Jr. coming down the stretch, and they still found a way to win. And you have a Ronald Acuna Jr. right now who's in the prime of his career. He's playing like one of the better players in baseball. He definitely is going to be in the mix to win the National League MVP. And of course, it's not just about Acuna Jr., it's about the other guys that I've named on this team, the Austin Rileys, the Ozzy Osbournes, the Marcell Ozunas, and so many others that are contributing. And when you have a deep lineup like that, it changes things because on any given night, you can go to any guy in that lineup has the ability to pick up this entire lineup, and this is what we're seeing this year for this Braves team. This is why one of the reasons why they're winning so many games, and this is another reason why some people have them penciled in to win the World Series. But I'll tell you like this, and I'm not trying to sound like a Debbie Downer, but you look at how consistent the Braves have been in recent years. And of course, some people are going to think about the Braves teams from the 1990s. And of course, that was a perennial championship team every year for the most part for the decade of the 90s. Multiple World Series appearances, but of course, only the one championship back in 1995 when they beat Cleveland. And I make reference to that because I'm saying just like that Atlanta team from that era, this current Braves team is going to be judged by what they can or cannot do in October. And it's not just the Braves, it's anybody. I mean, you look at the Dodgers, just changing gears real quick, been one of the better teams in baseball for the last 10 years. They consistently make the postseason, but obviously, what you do in the regular season and what you do in the postseason are two different things. And no disrespect to the Braves, they had a phenomenal year last year, started off slow, got it going, caught the Mets to win the divisional title. And then they got to the postseason and ran into a very hot Philadelphia Phillies team that rode their momentum after they got hot coming down the stretch, and they rode that all the way to the National League pennant. Nonetheless, this Braves team is once again going to be very formidable. I'm not going to go out there and pencil this team in as a World Series champion yet, because in the playoffs, especially with the expanded wild card, as we saw last year, anything can happen. The top two seeds in the National League last year, the Braves and Dodgers, were one and done. And speaking of the Braves and Dodgers, obviously they're getting set to kick off a 4-game series in a matter of minutes. And this series is going to go a very long way in determining not only who has the best record in the National League, but also who possibly has the best record in baseball and is going to get home field advantage. Braves and Dodgers have been two of the better teams, for the past decade. Obviously, when you think about it, Dodgers won it all in 2020, and then the Braves followed them in 2021. And of course, the Braves were on the cusp of getting to the World Series in 2020. They had a 3-1 lead in the LCS over the Dodgers before LA came back, and then they got the best of the Dodgers in 2021. But nonetheless, I think this definitely could be a playoff preview at Chavez Ravine this weekend. Both of these teams are talented. Both of them are loaded. Both of them are hitting their stride at the right time. And in the case of the Braves, you can really make the case that they've basically hit their stride all season long. But nonetheless, this Braves team is definitely going to be a tough out in the postseason. And I think that them being one and done last year in the playoffs, I think is going to sit on their minds heading into the playoffs this year. Not in a negative way. I think it's going to be motivation as they look to put that behind them because they know that what you do in the regular season is one thing, but people are always going to remember you by what you do in the playoffs. But nonetheless, credit to this organization for their drafting, their developing. They locked a lot of their young guys up to long-term deals very early on in the process. And because of that, this is why we're seeing this consistency out of this team. This Braves team's not going away anytime soon. They're still going to be in the mix for several years to come. And that's what it comes down to, developing your talent, getting them to the big league level. And that's what it all comes down to, having a system. So these are Atlanta Braves are as good as advertised. And let's see how dangerous this team could be, or can be rather, come next month in the playoffs. So, folks, that is going to wrap it up. And as always, I want to take this time out to thank you for tuning into the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast here on YouTube. I want to take this time out to thank all of you fine folks out there for tuning in. And if you have not already, please feel free to subscribe to this channel. Now, if you're on X, formerly Twitter, please feel free to follow me at 300 Pounds of Sports. And like I always say, if you follow me, it will be my pleasure to follow you right back. There's also the sports discussion group on Facebook at the Sports Depot 365. Now you can check it out. Drop a line and be a part of one of the better sports debating sites going on social media. So once again, fine folks, my name is William Martin, and I am signing off. And I'm saying take care and have yourselves a wonderful day.